Steven Spielberg was only 26 when he filmed Jaws. On July 15, 1974, a photographer captured something that Universal Pictures tried to hide for decades. The photo shows what really happened during the beach attack scene. During test screening, 13 viewers fainted and 2 started vomiting. The studio panicked and buried the footage, but one crew member kept the evidence. When it surfaced in 2018, film experts couldn't believe their eyes. The mechanical shark wasn't the problem. What they filmed that day was too real for audiences. It all started by accident. In 1973, Richard Zanuck and David Brown, 2 Hollywood producers, found a story that would change everything. Brown picked up a copy of Cosmopolitan magazine, which his wife, Helen, edited. Inside, a short card described an unpublished novel called Jaws. The final line said, "Might make a good movie." That small line was enough. Brown shared it with Zanuck. They both read the manuscript in one night. The next morning, they couldn't stop talking about it. They thought it was the most exciting story they had ever read. Without wasting time, they decided to buy the rights. Later, Brown admitted, they moved too fast. If they had read the book a second time, they might have realized how hard it would be to turn it into a film. But by then, it was too late. They were all in. Universal Pictures agreed to back them. The studio paid $175,000 for the rights even before the book came out. That's over $1.2 million in today's money. It was a huge risk. All they had was a promising story and 2 excited producers. But the timing worked. When the book was published in February 1974, it became a massive hit. The hardback stayed on bestseller lists for 44 weeks. The paperback sold millions. If Universal had waited, they would have faced a bidding war. Instead, they got it cheap. Now came the harder part, finding the right director. Steven Spielberg had just finished the Sugarland Express. He was young, only 26, and already under contract, but he didn't want to do Jaws. He worried it would trap him. A few years earlier, he made Duel, a movie about a man being hunted by a truck, another predator story. He feared people would label him the shark guy. He tried to leave. He even looked at other films. One was called Lucky Lady, but Universal wouldn't let him go. He was still under contract, and they knew what he could do, so they told him to stay, and he did. Casting was a mess. Spielberg wanted Jon Voight to play Hooper, but in the end, Richard Dreyfuss took the role. On January 3, 1974, he called Spielberg out of the blue. He wasn't happy with his own work in the apprenticeship of Duty Kravitz and decided to jump on board. Filming was just 4 months away. For Quint, Spielberg wanted Lee Marvin or Sterling Hayden. Both said no. That's how Robert Shaw got the role. He nailed it. But on set, he clashed with Dreyfuss constantly. Shaw drank too much. Dreyfuss was cocky. They annoyed each other. Still, their real-life tension added something special to their scenes. Everything felt rushed. Universal wanted to ride the wave of the book's success. They pushed the film forward. Spielberg started shooting on May 2, 1974. The script wasn't finished. The mechanical sharks didn't work. The budget exploded, climbing from $3.50 million to $9 million. The schedule stretched from 55 days to 159. Spielberg, still only 26, felt the pressure. He still feared being boxed in. He wanted out. But producer David Brown talked him down. He told Spielberg that if he finished Jaws, he could make anything after. That promise kept him going. Spielberg didn't just want fear. He wanted laughs, too. He didn't see Jaws as a pure horror film. He didn't want it to be a grim hunt in the sea. He wanted real people, real tension, and moments of humor. To help with that, he called Carl Gottlieb. Gottlieb was a comedy writer who had worked on The Odd Couple. On April 3, 1974, Spielberg sent him the script. Gottlieb wrote back with 3 pages of suggestions. Spielberg loved it. He showed the notes to the producers. A few days later, the 4 of them met at the Hotel Bel Air. By the next week, Gottlieb was flying to Boston with Spielberg. He was supposed to help cast locals, but Spielberg had a bigger plan. He needed help fixing the script. Gotadl got to work fast. He focused on character. He made them feel human. One of his most famous touches came during a dinner scene. Brody, Hooper, and Quint start comparing scars. That moment came out of one of Gotadl's late-night dinners with the cast. They improvised it. The shark kept breaking down. It barely worked. So the film leaned harder on the actors. Their dialogue carried the scenes. The line, "You're going to need a bigger boat," wasn't even in the script. It was made up on the spot, but it became legendary. Gott's role grew quickly. He was hired for a 1-week rewrite starting April 27th. He stayed for 9 weeks. Each night he had dinner with Spielberg and the cast. They talked about what scenes to shoot next. Ideas came out of those meals. Lines were written on the fly. One big change was cutting the affair from the book. In the novel, Brody's wife has a fling with Hooper. But when Gotadl saw the actors together, he knew it wouldn't work. He said, "We're not going to show her cuckolding Brody with this dweeb." So the affair was gone. He also rewrote Hooper. He shaped the character around Richard Dreyfuss. In some ways, Hooper became a stand-in for Spielberg himself, a curious, smart, slightly awkward outsider. That change gave the film more heart. On May 2nd, 1974, a young and determined Steven Spielberg stood at the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. He had only directed one feature film before, but this time he had something bigger in mind. Spielberg made a bold call. He chose to film Jaws out at sea instead of inside a studio tank. Everyone warned him not to. Studios hated the idea, but Spielberg believed real water, real skies, and real movement were the only way to make it feel alive. The team picked Martha's Vineyard as their battleground. It was calm and beautiful on the surface, but a nightmare to shoot in. To make the mechanical shark work, they needed a spot deep enough for it to swim, but shallow enough to anchor equipment. They settled on a bizarre patch 10 to 12 miles offshore that was only 30 feet deep. Spielberg later called it the worst place in the world to shoot a movie. Nature did not care about their schedule.